Earlier this year, the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police shocked many around the world. The video caused outrage and sparked tens of thousands to take part in Black Lives Matter protests here in Canada, in the U.S., and throughout the world. Far too long our sisters and brothers and friends in the Black community have suffered against systemic and entrenched discrimination and injustice. Hate, discrimination, and prejudice must come to an end. The time is now. UFCW Canada Local 1006A stands in support of the Black community and their collective struggle for equality, justice, and fairness. And with that said, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Glacier here to have a conversation with a couple of special guests. Glacier?
As Wayne mentioned, your local union stands in solidarity with the Black community in the struggles for equality, justice, and fairness. As an expression of solidarity, some of you may have noticed the Black Lives Matter banner on our website. We want the Black and racialized community to know your voice matters, your experiences matter, Black Lives Matter. And to speak with us tonight on this issue, I am proud to welcome 1006A Union Stewards, Rishav Brown and Kalisha Hoyes, to share their thoughts and experiences on the BLM movement for racial equality and justice. Rishav and Kalisha, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to start with Kalisha by asking, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you, Kalisha?
I just want to say hello and good night to everyone. To me, Black Lives Matter, it's everything. It's spoken and yet unspoken. It's subconsciously overlooked and tolerated. Black Lives Matter is a movement that finally has everyone looking, listening, and understanding just the tip of our struggles. And I say just the tip of our struggles because since Black Lives Matter has been creating more awareness, a lot of people are still silent, not realizing that they too are a part of the problem. To me, pro-Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that people of color want to be the dominant race. We just want to be treated equally, fairly, and like human beings. Not initially seen as threatening based on our skin tone. We are tired of senseless killings and unnecessary and uncalled for interactions or prejudgments based on the color of our skin.
Thanks, Kalisha. Rishav, what about you? Can you speak about what Black Lives Matter means to you?
Yeah, for sure. And again, first off, I want to say good night and thank everybody for being on this call and to be dealing with such an important issue. So Black Lives Matter means to me like Black folks having equal rights and opportunity, and just the way how we're treated by the state in terms of Canada being like a colonial society, and which goes beyond like how we're treated by just the police, but also how we're treated by like state institutions, how we interact with other Canadians that are not racialized, just like how we're treated in the community and how we're treated at work.
It's unfortunate that it took the senseless killing of George Floyd for this attention to be brought to this issue, but it's something that we needed to talk about. And I'm glad both of you shared those points. I've often heard people say that racism is an American problem or that it's not so bad in Canada. We know this isn't the case. Can you both share what's been your experience growing up as a Black person in Canada? Kalisha, I'll start with you.
As a Black woman growing up in Canada, I was raised to love the skin I'm in by my parents and my grandparents. I was taught from a young age the importance of working hard and building a foundation for my family. I also learned from a young age that I was different simply because of the shade of my skin. There are numerous times I could recall in school where I was treated harsher than other students, told not to use the brown crayon for coloring people because it should be colored peach, and that brown is too dark. The list goes on. When entering the workforce, a tip I will never forget was to shorten my name so it doesn't sound like I'm Black and thus possibly giving an employer a reason to pass me over. Becoming a young adult, people would always assume before they got to know me that I am unfriendly, have an attitude, or simply just intimidating. Then there's simple comments like saying, "Oh, you're very articulate," like it's a big surprise that a young Black woman can professionally communicate.
Rishev, same question to you. What's been your experience growing up as a Black man in Canada?
Well, for me, it's a bit different because I didn't really like grow up here. I moved here when I was like 20, but like my mom has always been here, so I used to be here like every summer, right? So it's basically I used to be here like 3 months a year. So I guess I can still kind of speak on that. So the experience for me growing up in Canada has been a bit bittersweet because I did there's always going to be those good Canadians who understand the history of Canada, and by saying that, it just basically means that there's those Canadians who know that we're all immigrants, like unless we're like indigenous, right? So, those you meet those people, and then they give you the respect that you deserve, they give you the rights that you deserve, and then there are those Canadians who believe that being Canadian means being white, and yeah, that's not really good because there's and this goes beyond like the Black Lives Matter story, because there's also immigrants who move here from like Eastern European countries who are poor just like us and kind of deal with the same experiences that we deal with. So I see it beyond like a race thing, but it's more like of a class struggle, and we need to see how we can link like that Canadian experience with the Black Lives Matter situation, because we do need allies in this fight, because you can't really have like racism without capitalism, but that's like a whole other discussion. So my experience has been like bittersweet based off that.
Right. There's good and there's bad, right? It's a
Yeah.
work in progress. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can relate to some of those experiences. There's often resistance to change. It's a human nature. With progress, however, there will usually be some counter reaction. The facts are that Black people are dying at the hands of police at a disproportionate number. What does it mean to be Black in Canada in 2020? And what do you feel has changed since the Black Lives Matter protests began? I'll let you respond first, Rishev.
Being Black in Canada in 2020 has definitely been stressful, and I'm saying that because in terms of like the conversations that people tend to like individuals try to have with me, like I'm sure people have seen the video where I spoke at a Black Lives Matter rally in front of Division 52 in Toronto, because some of our comrades were arrested for protesting the Ryerson statue, and like after that video went out, people were like, "Oh, like why would you do that?" and stuff like that. But I just felt it was my time to speak, and because of that, like I've been having a lot of deep conversations with a lot of people. So yeah, and they're basically like trying to justify like, why are you guys protesting? Why can't you guys just be grateful that you live in like North America, right? And not somewhere starving, right? But like the racism and injustice has always existed. It's just this year it's kind of like resurfaced. And I could go back 4 years ago that it's resurfaced since the election of Donald Trump. Right, we've seen the rise of right-wing politics, and right-wing politics go hand in hand with with racism as opposed to socialism, where everybody's coming together. So as sad as it might sound, to me, nothing has really changed since the Black Lives Matter protest, because since then we've seen unarmed Black people still getting shot by the police. We're still being racially profiled, and we're still being called the N-word. Right, so it's a tricky situation because the Black Lives Movement has grown so much, it has actually caused the other side to kind of rise, to kind of combat that.
Right.
And so they don't want to see us rise, so we're going to see more racist people, because people are becoming more, race conscious.
That goes back to the counter reaction, right? Change is difficult for a lot of people, and sometimes rather than making the change, they rather revert back. Kalisha, same question. What are your thoughts? Like, have you noticed any difference since the BLM protest?
For me in 2020, I still find being a Black woman in Canada is still how it's been when I was younger. I still hear people referring to young Black men as gangsters based on the clothes they wear. I still feel eyes on me more than others when I'm shopping retail. I still hear criticism about our hairstyles and words used to describe it, such as messy, puffy, unkept, the list goes on, as if our genetic hair texture is something other than beautiful. I still don't see much people in superior job titles that look like me. I feel as though, especially now that Black Lives Matter has become such a known issue, companies are trying to protect and project an image of equality, but unfortunately it's still not a completely genuine effort.
Recently, the discussion around BLM has evolved from reaction to blatant and violent racism, as evidenced by Floyd's murder, to a conversation on how the system and structures within our society enable and perpetuate racism and inequality more generally. Why is it important that we examine how racism is embedded in our society? I'll start with you, Kalisha.
Now that all these violent incidents are coming to light, it is so important to address the root of the issue. It's important to address these issues with our children so we grow the next generation to do better than we are now. Sheltering our children from real-life situations just continues the thought that complacency is okay, the thought that it's okay to not get involved or share our concerns because it doesn't involve us directly. It's important to not be naive in thinking that racism isn't taught to a certain degree, whether it comes from parents, grandparents, friends, media, whatever it may be. More importantly, we also need to focus on training individuals in power, better strategic methods, so that when dealing with our community as a whole, we can hold them accountable for the misuse of their power.
Rishabh, what about you? What are your thoughts?
This is an interesting question, and I mean I could speak on this for an hour, but I don't have that.
We don't have all that time, Rishabh.
It's important we examine racism in society, to show and to highlight that even though like slavery was abolished, the systems that were put in place after slavery still have an impact. It still keeps us oppressed. And we can see this because it's evident in terms of like when you look at stuff like carding, when you look at stuff as like black workers make a bit less than their white counterparts, and then that opens up a whole other question, because I see this as, for example, racism is not individual; it's a system, right? It's a system that will put in place. It's an idea when you really think about it. But for me, like I'm a socialist, right? So I'm always going to see it as like it's also like a class issue. So it's a working class issue. So we also need the white working class. We also need white people who feel like that they're being oppressed to be our allies. Because at the end of the day, like I stated before, we can't have racism without capitalism, and it's just a society that we live in, because capitalism makes it so easy to exploit people, and with exploitation comes racism. With exploitation comes slavery. Because like I feel like we're modern slaves right now, right? Because like we're like as working class people, we're making way less than that we should be actually making. So we definitely need to examine the system in terms of racism, but we also need to take a deep look at the capitalist system as well, and how that plays a part in terms of the bigger picture, and just bringing everybody together, like every working class person, white, black, no matter what.
Right. Good points, Rishabh. Those are excellent points. I know you both have been involved in the BLM activism online and in the streets. Would you tell us a bit about that and how members can be allies in the fight for racial justice? Because, I know I have, non-racialized friends, and I think it is uncomfortable for non-racialized people. They want to support, they're just not sure how to do it, right? They don't want to offend. So can you share some pointers on how members can be allies for the fight for racial justice? Rishabh, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I can definitely speak on this. And for the people on the call, I'm not sure, a lot of people don't know, but like Black Lives Matter Toronto is started and is led by like black trans folks, black LGBTQ plus folks. These are the people who started Black Lives Matter Toronto. So it's so easy to become an ally, because we could we could we could get on a level and reason with these people and help these people on a level that goes beyond just race, right? We could start going over into gender identity and stuff like that. So, like, and if anybody in the call want to get involved with Black Lives Matter Toronto, or just want to be an ally, let me know, because these people are my friends. Like, I know these people personally. But yeah, like, just calling out racism where you see it happening, whether at work or whether in public. If you see it happening, just call out for what it is. Don't like try to hide your face and pretend like you're not seeing it. Don't be scared to step up, because I'm sure there's other people there that's gonna side with you, because at the end of the day, this is Canada and you should feel safe, you know, as a Canadian stepping up for a brother or a sister who feels like he's not being treated fairly or equally. So being an ally, it's so easy, right? So that alone just goes like a long way, I think.
Kelisha, what about you?
I would say just simply doing things like educating themselves by researching and seeing for themselves a lot of our struggles and even our overlooked triumphs. They can choose to speak up and defend us by not being bystanders. Oftentimes we witness things, whether it be a conversation we may not agree with, but choose to not speak our true feelings on the matter and defend what is right. Or be it a violent attack like on Floyd, where an innocent man was killed. And this could have been easily avoided if the bystanders simply stood up for what was morally correct. Members can be better allies by not being silent and helping to create awareness.
Great. I want to thank you both for joining us and sharing your experiences tonight. Racism, racial injustice, systemic racism, these are difficult topics and uncomfortable things, discussions that people don't necessarily want to have. But these are conversations that need to be had if we're going to make change. And despite, the George Floyd being murdered as the trigger, it's unfortunate that that's what caused, I guess the world to actually, decide, okay, this is enough. But something had to be done, and that's what triggered it, and I'm glad we're having the discussion. I'm hoping that this is the start of a change, right? Not racism, like Rishav, you mentioned. It's an idea. It's something that, was created, and it didn't start overnight, and it's not going to end overnight, but at least we're taking a step towards some form of change and social justice. So, again, thank you both for coming tonight. It was a great discussion. Now I want to turn things back over to President Hanley.
Thanks, Glacier. And Kelisha and Rishav and Glacier, I want to sincerely thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this very important issue with us. The powerful messages that you had in your closing remarks and the issue of what allies can do and be an ally and not a bystander are something that we should all take away from this discussions. I want the members from the racialized communities to know that we see you, we hear you, your voice matters, your life matters, and we stand with you in this movement for justice and equality. And non-racialized people need to hear your voice and your messages. But everyone on the line with us here tonight at the core, our union values are about standing for equality, inclusion, and we encourage all members to learn more about the issues affecting our sisters, our brothers, and our friends in the Black community and commit. Make a commitment to being an ally in the collective struggle for equality.